Imkan here, 4 seconds out with the one and only Dave Colwell. Dave, it feels like we're going to have dinner. Hope Price is looking to serve up a dish of punishment tomorrow night. Conor Coggle is the opponent. Just talking about Hopi and what you're looking for from Hopi tomorrow night.
I'm just looking for him to go out there and express himself. Go out there, express himself, have some fun, and put on a show. Yeah.
In terms of him and his growth and development, where do you feel he is and where do you think the next steps are for him coming through the fight, albeit, of course, not looking past the objective on Saturday?
I don't look past anything. This opponent was picked because he's a southpaw, because the British champion is a southpaw. He was due to fight Raza Hamza. I knew he was going to beat Raza Hamza. And I said, look, we need to fight a southpaw in our next fight before we go there. So this fight was made. And it's perfect, perfect sort of... Everything that I'm doing with Opie is all about his development. Little stages, little problems, different puzzles that he gets to face. I've never ever been interested in blasting out journeymen and things like that, and I want him to get rounds. I've had little step ups before. He's fought unbeaten fighters before. He's fought local rivals 16-1 before when he was, I think, in his 6th fight. He's been in these sort of little pressure fights before. 2 fights ago, a former European champion, world title challenger. Last fight, former British title challenger. It's all part of his development. So I expect Conor Coggle to give him some problems in the fact that he hasn't faced for a long time as in a southpaw. But obviously we're prepared for that. So I just want Hopi to go in there and do what he's been doing in the gym and show that there's levels to this game. And there are levels to this game. And no disrespect, people are telling me that it's a step up. It's a step up on a piece of paper when you look at somebody's numbers on a record. Conor's 14-0. He's fought 13 journeymen. The one guy that he fought that was coming off for a knockout loss. So, when they're saying it's a step up and all this sort of stuff, it's not. Like I said, the test is the southpaw style. The problems that Conor Cogle's going to give Hope that he's not faced as a professional yet is the southpaw style, dealing with that. So this is a big part of his development before we move on into the British title.
Have we seen a fair reflection of Hopi's skills and abilities in the ring in terms of the one that you see on a day-to-day basis in the gym? Have we seen that yet?
You've not seen the full repertoire yet, no. For each fight, for each stage of the development and the opponent that he's facing, he's boxed to orders. He's boxed as I've asked him to. He's not the crash bang wallop type of fighter, but if you make a mistake early doors, he can take you out, as Zahid Hussein did, proved. He's somebody that will gather his experience as he's going along in his career, because I didn't want him rushing, but I also know that promoters like to, these days you can't have X amount of fights before you start being let off leash. It's sooner rather than later. So I want the rounds, and I want the progression, and I want to be able to see that. It's like with James Beach Jr. You saw him turn it up as it went along and doing more as it went along. He can do that earlier if he needs to, but he's at this stage, what's the point? We'll box to however I feel that it's going to bring his development through for the bigger fights. It's always been about 12 rounders. So when he's been boxing 6 rounders, even his first couple of 4 rounds, it was never a case of, like a lot of fighters like rush the work because they've only got 4 rounds, 6 rounds. It's never been a case of that. It's been a case of like, look, put your mind as though you're going to be boxing a 12 rounder, get the job done, but I don't want you just doing things that you wouldn't be doing. I want you plotting and planning, setting things up as though you would do in a 12 round fight. So that's how he's been doing it. And then you saw in the last fight, which was a good step up. You saw him cranking it up, and in the end, Jimmy Beach sat on his stool and didn't come back out. Stopped him in the same amount of rounds as the champion did. The previous fight, the guy basically didn't give him much to shoot at, and he was former European champion and world title challenger. that he got a good 10 rounds of somebody pressuring. There's been, if you look at the opponents he's had different types of opponents. And this is all part of developing, and I feel that that's what you need to do if you're a fighter that's going to be looking to go into the upper echelons of the sport, especially when you're not I'm not an idiot, he's not a one-punch knockout merchant, so he's never going to be that guy that goes out and just knock people out in a round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds max. He has to learn his craft, and like I said, because there's this rush on with young prospects that have got any talent these days, he's had to do it on, in the fights we've had. So we've never been where, you hear people say, oh, he needs to go up through the gears quick, he needs to, we want knockouts. We've never felt that pressure, because as long as he's developing physically and technically, but also mentally in there and gathering that experience, I'm not really bothered, because ultimately he'll be judged on the end of his career rather than 10, 11 fights in.
Number of points that I could pick out from your response there, but there's one I wanted to specifically talk about in terms of development and then promoters pushing for fights. And we were listening to an enthralling conversation there whether you heard it earlier, but I also noted that in his interviews recently he's kind of been saying, look, I'm rejecting fighters who want runouts or this fight or that fight, and I'm kind of pushing for these sort of fights. Not to say that that's relevant to Hope's career specifically, but do you expect the promoter to be pushing for certain fights after this, or in a general sense with any prospect forward? Do you think that that's going to be becoming more of an issue where the promoter is looking for tougher fights from the outset, considering what Eddie Hearn has said recently?
So I mean, I've not heard what Eddie said, but in terms of, I understand, I used to be a promoter, so I understand when you're a promoter, you're putting an event, you have to give people value for money. So you need to put on entertaining fights or meaningful fights, but at the same time, if you go back to the old school matchmakers and fighter developments, look, I think Top Rank are one of the best that there's ever been, because there's little steps up, but they don't rush the prospects. If you look at Shakur Stevenson, you look at him in the early days of his career, I remember when people say, oh, I don't punch hard enough, oh, he'll come unstuck because he's not strong enough. They allowed him to develop physically. They allowed his already substantial boxing skills to become more suited to the pro game, to become better and better, learning through sparring, and to get the right opponents that give him tests, but he's going to beat in the early stages. And then when he was ready to be let off the leash, there you go. That's what my plan is with Hope, and that's how I see things, and that's how I think fighters kind of should be developed. And I'm talking, that's modern day, but I'm talking about going back to the 80s and your Bruce Tramplers and people like that were matchmakers at Top Rank. Frank Warren, the way that he used to develop the fighters, way back, you would always have those little step ups and not rush the fighters. Today's world seems a little bit more where you have a couple of fights to get your name out there where you're banging people out and you're fighting nobodies, and then all of a sudden it's like, once the spotlight's on you, you thrust, that's it, we need to test you. This kid's showing a bit of promise, he's good, right, we need to test him. Rather than, he's good, right, we need to develop him. And sometimes, more often than not, really, you're seeing that kids are coming unstuck. I don't want to see my prospects at a lower level, in the 5-6 fight, level, having life and deaths. Because if you're having life and deaths in 5 and 6, there's plenty of hard fights that then come your way, So if we can make it easy, and that's, like I said, look at Opie's resume. He's not been fighting, journeyman. If you can make the fights easy, then don't worry if everybody else is getting the spotlight for now. When it's times, the time comes where you be let off the leash, then let's have the big fights, the hard fights, the tough nights. That will come. But I get the promoter thing, they need to, but also the problem is even when, say, these kids, they get thrust in and there's the term, if you're good enough, you'll win. I get that, but then when you make that jump, you might win that fight, but then you're stuck there, and then everybody in that pool there is who you are having to fight. And you might not get beat by somebody that's better than you, but you might get beat through lack of experience. You can't can't pretend to have experience. You can't nick it. You can't pay for it. You have to go through shit to get it. And whether that's rounds at the banks, little problems in a fight, things where somebody gets on your chest, you don't know how to handle it, somebody clips you, and you never had that feeling. But if you have things like that for the first time at a higher level, those guys don't let you off the hook. A lower level, you might get caught off for a journeyman or a gatekeeper or whatever. You get caught, it just buzzes you a little bit. But they're not quite good enough to land the second and third shot on you, and that's where you learn from those mistakes, and then it gives you an understanding of what the sport's about before you're thrown in at the deep level. But again, I'm speaking from a coach's point of view, from a manager's point of view. A promoter's point of view is completely different, and a fan's point of view is different as well. This is why I think cards need to have you stack cards towards the top, and then you build up fights for the prospects a little bit lower down. And I think people need to be a bit patient with that. But then when people are forking out money, if they think, well, I'm paying out this and I'm watching this fight here and I know who's going to win, that's why I don't want my fighters fighting people that are just turning up just to tuck up, cover up, don't throw a shot. Every opponent I pick for my fighters, whether it's Hope, Stephen Cairns, Ali's a little bit different because his first fight, he's 18, he's not fought since he was 15, so I've got to be a little bit more careful and give him a little bit more time because he's a baby. But say with those two, even my other fighters that I've had, I like to get opponents. Yes, I expect them to beat, but I want the guys to be throwing punches, so it's realistic. Otherwise, they might as well let a bag. And then also the fans that are paying to come and watch your box can be like, "Oh, what's the point in that?" Do you get me? So it's difficult, and this is why there's not many good matchmakers about, because one that sticks out, when I was promoting, John Pegg did a lot of matches for my shows, and John Pegg still to this day, he's a fantastic matchmaker because he will get it where your fighter is actually going to learn during that fight. I don't see the point in having guys that don't throw anything back and they're tough, and you're looking at, oh yeah, but he's never been stopped. If you can stop it, yeah, but you don't throw no punches. So it's like, how tough is that punch bag really? And you're not getting anything out of it. They're learning more in sparring than they are in the fights. Whereas I want to learn in sparring and in the gym, but I want them to be able to pick up the experience on fight night.
Swinging into the rest of the card, obviously headlined by Lee Wood and Josh Warrington. Lee, of course, someone you know very, very well. Fights are often won and lost on scales, and there's always whispers and innuendo about fighters when they're approaching scale days or weigh-in days, as it were. Judging by both fighters on the scales, could you favour one or the other?
It's very difficult because my initial reaction, I was with Opie when Lee Wood walked out on stage, and we both looked at each other and said, "Fucking hell, he looks rough." But then when you take your mind back, it looked worse for the Conlan fight. He don't keep it a secret. He struggles to make featherweight. He's a big kid and he's been at featherweight a long, long time. So he's always going to struggle. So it didn't look great, but I've seen him look worse. That doesn't mean to say that he's made it better this time than he did last time. It don't mean that. But it's very hard to say because certain fighters, they've got this, that no matter how crap they feel on the scales, they get the refueling and they feel better, and then they soak it up in the body and they're strong the next day. I always used to look at fighters at weigh-ins and really read into that. I remember Alex Hall used to look like awful on the scales, completely different kid next. But I remember Figueroa when he boxed Ricky Burns, I think it was, out in LA, I think it was. And Figueroa had to get carried onto the scales. He was like literally dead on scales. It literally had to be. I remember seeing him backstage and he was just sat like hunched over. They had to pick him up. They walked him to the scales. He got on the scales, literally got him off the scales and helped him back to his seat. And we were all backstage like, because he didn't even make the weight as well, I think. And I remember Ricky and everybody was like, "Hell, you've got this in bag. He's absolutely dead. He's going to be dead tomorrow." And then the next day, not only did he look completely different, he was like fully fueled up, he was massive, but his energy for 12 rounds was non-stop, and he like he had too much work rate for Ricky Burns, and I remember thinking that how has he done that? Some fighters just can do that, so it's difficult to say. Some fighters, they feel weak and it gets in the red, or physically they just can't do it. Other fighters can, so you can never read into it properly. I think Warrington look tight. Probably, yeah, around the forehead. Yeah, I think they both do. They've both been at this weight division for quite a long time, and they've both, had to work hard. They're both getting on a little bit, so it's hard to say who has the edge there.
Would it be fair to say that either fighter, should they find themselves on the end of a defeat tomorrow night, that there aren't very many, if at all, any turns left in the road to travel down in terms of fights? Maybe with Leigh Wood, you could say that you have the Conlan rematch and go on from there. But for Josh, given the recent record, maybe nowhere else to turn to. Is that a fair assessment of what's on the line outside of just a world title tomorrow?
It's very odd when you talk about people that have got big names. Because with big names, there's always somebody that's willing to pay him a good paycheck for the next kid that's coming through. And then that fighter might think, well, all I've got to do is beat him and then I'm back in there for this shot. So it's very difficult to say, oh, that's the end. But also comes with fighters at this stage of their careers, and after what they've achieved, what they've gone through, the hard work, the wear and tear, and both of them talking about exits, is that desire. Can they be asked to climb the mountain again? Like you said, Leigh Wood, maybe, the Conlan thing, because that would be massive no matter what. Maybe the lure of that paycheck would then make him think, you know what, yeah, I'll take that. But then if Leigh Wood sits there and thinks, well, do you know what? I've absolutely cracked it. I've got loads of money. I've made a stack. Me and my family are absolutely set. I don't need to give him. I mean, right. King of the builders. He may think I don't need to give Conlan an opportunity to reverse that. And he might just jack it in anyway. So I think it's safe to say that the loser would probably jack it in, but through their choice more than not having anywhere to go, I don't think.
Speaking of Mick Conlan, is he meeting with Jordan Gill in the ring?
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. I don't know. That's what I've heard.
In terms of looking at the broader strokes of boxing, I just want to get your thoughts on a couple of things. From a trainer's perspective, first of all, Jermell Charlo took on Canelo last weekend. He's getting a lot of stick now online about maybe not following up his speech in terms of gritting his teeth and really trying to go for the win against Canelo. Is that a fair assessment in terms of how he performed against Canelo? And also, just to follow that up as well, a lot of people talking about signs of slipping from Canelo Alvarez on that performance. I know, obviously, Charlo wasn't as forthcoming as we expected, but did you see the signs that people are talking about?
If you want me to be honest, it's my opinion that I've seen signs of that for quite a while. And I think it's more of a choice in style that I've seen previously that might add to this perception in my head that is not as the same fight that it was. Because I feel as though, like, going back to probably the Kovalev fight, it might have been even before that, but the Kovalev fight, he used to have this really good trunk movement, sharp, his punch selection, he'd not just throw single shots, good variety, but not just single shots loaded up on power. Yes, he'd throw single shots, but sharp shots. And then he just seemed to straighten up a little bit, hands tight, chin down, walking people down and looking for this one big shot all the time. And I remember Kovalev, who was about 130 years old at the time, I think he was winning. If I remember that fight rightly, he seemed to be winning the fight. He's just beating him on a jab. A much faded Kovalev. And then the money shot that he'd been loaded up on all night landed and he took him out. But I think from then he's not been the same Canelo. But I think that's just through a choice where he's gone more power based. I think maybe it's the move up in the weight divisions or whatever, where he just feels that he wants to load up more and hurt these bigger guys as such. And he's still been winning. He's still been doing what he needs to do. Obviously, came up against Bivol, and that didn't work. And I did think that for the first few rounds the other night, he was going back. He was showing more feints. He seemed a bit sharper, and I liked what I saw. I thought, oh right, okay. But then as it went on, he reverted back to just being a bit more stationary, like looking for the single shots, different shots, but single shots all the time. I just think that's how he is now. I think he's probably been doing that for quite a while, but to try and sustain with the age, with probably fitness levels aren't what they used to be. With the age, trying to sustain what the activity is, what he used to do, probably takes a little bit on himself, takes a little bit out of himself, and he can't really sustain it now. In terms of Charlo, mate, I was shocked and I was so disappointed, because you're not talking about a fighter that's being given an opportunity that's kind of like not been there yet, and this is his wow. I've got an opportunity of being a world champion, undisputed, and everybody gets blinded by the Canelo. I had Ryan Rhodes, but Ryan Rhodes was European champion, British champion, and then get an opportunity at Canelo. So I understand, wow, it's Canelo, we're in Mexico, and it's massive. Now Canelo's a lot bigger, but Charlo was undisputed champion. You have to have an elite mentality to become undisputed champion at whatever weight, right? Yes, he was 154, but he was undisputed champion. So for him to go up a couple of divisions, which is a big task, but I expected him to go up there and fucking give it a go. Really, he's Charlo. He can bang. He's got a good right hand. He's exciting. And I thought he'd give it a go, but ultimately I thought the size difference would be too much, and then Canelo would probably stop him, in the second half of the fight. That's how I thought. But I thought Charlo, with this undisputed elite mentality, would do that, would give it a go. What we got was a Charlo that he didn't look in particularly great shape. He'd just eaten more just to make the weight. Didn't look great contact, because normally Charlo looks in good nick, and he just looked smooth. And then right from round one, it never looked like he was trying to win the fight, and I think that's disappointing. To come from an elite, you're an elite fighter if you're undisputed. That is such an achievement. It's so hard to do. He was an undisputed champion. If you're not going to give it a go, you can't then say, oh well, it's too big, or is this or that, because you chose to go up 2 divisions. You took that challenge on. So what you actually did is just took on the challenge for the paycheck, and that's it. And then you can't perform like that and then in the ring shout out the man in Terence Crawford. He's a different animal. So yeah, it's a little bit disappointing in Charlo.
Closing out with a couple of questions. Jumping still at the top of the tree in terms of boxing, you mentioned your promoter days. Well, as a promoter, to get more traction to your fight, you'd want to put a poster and say that your fight is signed to get boxing fans jumping in 2 feet into the ball rolling. But we've had many false starts in terms of heavyweight fights, especially obviously this carrot of undisputed. Dashing that for aside a second, I think we've discussed Fury and Usyk to a degree, but I just wanted to ask you in terms of how close run is the fight between the two, and will it be a skill differential that sees the fight won or lost by either fighter?
I don't think it's a skill differential. I think Usyk's got the skill to beat Tyson Fury. I just don't know if he's got the physical capabilities to beat him. I've always felt that he's done fantastic at heavyweight, but I've always thought that in terms of his style, what made him so great, and he was a great cruiserweight, was lost when he had to put on the extra weight that slowed him down to go up to heavyweight. He's not as complex as what he once was. And in Fury, he faces not a static opponent. He faces an opponent that's very, very fluid. It's very, very tricky. He can box southpaw, he can box orthodox, and he is fucking huge. I don't think people realise. You always have it in your head, it's going to be a massive size difference. But then when they face up to each other in the ring when the bell goes, I think that's because obviously then there's no clothes covering anything, nothing. I think then you're going to realise how long Fury's arms are. Then you're going to realise how tall and how much bigger he is than Usyk. And I think that's where you're going to, that may be the struggle, that may be the problem. I remember when Riddick Bowe, when Evander Holyfield went up to heavyweight, and Holyfield would be fighting Riddick Bowe, and you just saw the size difference of them, and there was it's a big size difference between those two. And I know the different styles, don't get me wrong, I know the different styles, but that size difference wasn't actually as big as what this size difference is. And I just think the size, I think I'm a massive fan of Usyk, and I think his IQ and his boxing ability is amazing. I really do. But I just think he's slowed down at heavyweight, and I don't know if he's gonna have enough to negate that size. It's because he's got to be really sharp to get into that range, and then to be able to get out without getting clipped again. And you just know Fury's going to be whipping those body shots in as well. So it's a very, very tough ask. It really is.
Dave, we'll leave it there because I'm cognizant of the amount of time I've taken. I wasn't planning to do a long one. No, it always seems that we do long talks when we speak. So questions on the table, I'll leave them for another time. Appreciate you speaking to Seconds Out. All the best for tomorrow night. Much appreciated.